Parenisa, tell us that, when we talk about Eid, what is your typical Eid day like? Because I know a lot of working women, they say that, they just sleep through the whole day because it is that one day they get on which they have to, kind of catch up on their sleep.
I actually love the festive spirit of Eid. So I like waking up early, going down and having breakfast with the rest of the family. It's also rare that everyone is at home and, the whole family is together. So I look forward to meeting my cousins, my extended family, and then obviously I'm a big foodie, so I love the food aspect of it. You can have guilt-free eating for 2-3 days.
For those 3 days. But at the same time, I think we shouldn't encourage our viewers to eat too much, because if you eat too much, then you feel unwell, and then of course you're rushing to the hospital and making everybody worried about you. So you need to have that balance too. But when it comes to like kind of, revitalizing yourself, and it comes to, relaxing and everything. So I see that, a lot of people who work, especially they complain, a lot of women, they say that even on Eid they are working, because especially with Bakra Eid, they are cooking meals, they are in the kitchen, and they would be very happy if the male members in their houses, they swapped roles with them, so that they could have their own me time, perhaps they could enjoy the Eid in a more wholehearted manner. So do you think that this is something, a change perhaps which we need to bring, where we can expect men to share responsibilities with women, especially when it comes to kitchen work, at least on Eid?
No, absolutely. And I think it is the case that a lot of these holidays, while everyone's relaxing, there's always someone who's overlooking all the food preparation for you, and who's cooking in the kitchen for you. So I think as a nice Eid Mubarak gift to their wives, men should help out in the kitchen as well. And if you're hosting dinners, etc. at home, they should lend a helping hand, so that, I mean, they should anyway, but especially on Eid.
Because I know then, the burden is multiplied with you cooking dinner, with you washing the dishes, and, with you hosting people then, all in one go. But coming to you, Mohammed, I think you must tell us about your Eid festivities, because I know for you, what is equally important is both the pre-Eid prep as well as the day itself. So how do you, work towards making your Eid, more of a festival and, more enjoyable for yourself?
From my childhood, I used to go with my grandfather to the mandi to buy the bakras, and from those days, I used to take off from school, did not go to school those days, spent the day, the night, even had food with the animals, because we knew that they were there for a small amount of time. We had to spend time with them. I used to give them names. I remember when I was a kid, I named 2 goats that we got, Blondie and Spotty. Once we got a camel, I named her Vienna, like the city in Austria. Personally, I think the main thing is the aesthetics, and also like it generally like comes out of your mouth and it sticks with the animal. And like the main thing that I would like to say over here is that that animal dies on the Eid day, but the memories and that name still stays. You and I can still laugh about the memories that that animal gave to me in my life. So I think those times that I spent with the animal, they're for a finite time, but the memories that you procure are sort of like infinite. We can discuss it through the course of our lives, which is like a very beautiful aspect in my opinion.
And I think this is something which is very unique at the end of the day, because I do see a lot of young people out there, when the actual act of slaughtering is taking place, what they do is they kind of film it. Then there are those who, before they slaughter the animals, they take selfies with them. I've seen people even make Snapchat filters out of their goats, the animals which have to be sacrificed. So do you not feel that attitudes like these are kind of in a way derogatory for the animal itself? Because when we talk about slaughtering them, we have to do it in a compassionate manner, even if you look at it from a religious viewpoint.
I think as an animal lover, this is an insult to the animal. Today, commodification has increased so much in our society. I won't go on a rampage about that, but people just want to show off whatever they've gotten. And also people, when in a public realm, should think about the sensitivities of people. Like a person like me cannot look at blood, or people do not want to see like animals being slaughtered and them like in that predicament. So like people should care about such sensitivities, not just care about their own entertainment. And also I think the main thing that we need to discuss over here is that that animal is still a living being, and that living being has some dignity and some respect which we need to like take into consideration whilst we make videos and Snapchat filters out of those animals.
Right, and so this is exactly why I posed this question, because for the social media, just to glamorize their Instagram and to glamorize their Facebook, I think people resort to such things, which of course is not justifiable in any case. But sir, coming to you, I think we must also talk about your work too. You're also an accomplished musician in your own right. So tell us, how you came into this, because he is very clear that for him at least, he didn't plan it per se, he wanted always to do it, but he entered it by accident. So how did your entry in the music industry begin?
Actually, I saw my father playing harmonium at my home. So from him, I inspired, and I started learning harmonium and just starting playing tabla, and later on I have started singing.
You basically, it was more of a family thing at the end of the day. I think something which is in stark contrast with you. But when we talk about music, there's this one song which has that effect on you, which kind of uplifts your mood. It kind of revitalizes you, and I think we all have that one song which happens to be our favorite. So tell us, which is that one song which is kind of your go-to song?
Actually, there are many, but these days I love that song, Sajad Ali's song, Zindagi Hai Dua.
Right. Why do you love this song?
Actually, I have heard music of this song. It's a new genre, so that's why I really like that.
So you'll be singing Sajad Ali's Zindagi Hai Dua for us.
Yes.
So let's have you sing it for us.
थोड़ा खिलौना समझ के मेरा दिल जो तूने झूठे थे वादे किए थे कभी हमसे तुमने है बेवफा ये जहां बेवफा है ज़मीं बेवफा आसमां जिंदगी है दुआ तू कहाँ मैं कहाँ रो चुकी है ज़मीं रो चुका आसमां जिंदगी है दुआ चाहूं तुझे मेरे दिल में तमन्ना यही थी पालूं तुझे मेरे दिल में तमन्ना यही थी चाहूं तुझे मेरे दिल में तमन्ना यही थी पालूं तुझे मेरे दिल में तमन्ना यही थी तुझसे था दिल का जहां सह चुकी है ज़मीं सह चुका आसमां जिंदगी है दुआ तू कहाँ मैं कहाँ रो चुकी है ज़मीं रो चुका आसमां जिंदगी है दुआ।
That was super. On which I'll come to you, Tausif Saab. You know, we must also talk about the changing and the ever-evolving music trends as we do see them, you know, in the Pakistani music industry today. More so when it comes to young people, because I feel that, you know, the kind of music that they like now is very different from what they liked perhaps, you know, a decade ago.
True.
So how do you see that evolving? Because, you know, considering that you entered the music industry through this song of yours in 1998, and from 1998 to 2022, you know, we've come a long way. So how do you see this whole thing evolving over a period of time?
There are so many new artists who are joining the music industry now, and especially with this new this thing we call social media.
Right.
This had made it's so easy for anyone to jump into music. They can produce their own music while sitting at home. They don't need to go to studios to record their music. So everything evolves. So music is evolving. But what I feel is that the new talent, they must go through a training.
Of course.
A lot of new people who are in the industry, I feel that if we really put some system in place,
it needs to be streamlined and
of
regulated,
course, yes.
like any other profession.
Like any other profession.
Right.
So there has to be a system. They must go through some training, because it's very easy to go on TikTok and other platforms and portray yourself, put yourself out there.
Right.
But you need to have some.
But you know what, Tausif Saab, I think even if you put yourself out there, if you're not good, I don't think people would have you there for a very long time. You need to sustain yourself too. And I think when it comes to, you know, perhaps the kind of taste you have, that I feel, at least when I look at young people today, I see more young people, you know, opting to listen to ghazals, maybe to folk music, than what we had maybe some time back. And I think this is something on which you would perhaps want to add too, because I do know that you're into music as well that way. And then we as lawyers, you know, if you see the Pakistani music industry too, we see that, you know, they are lawyers, you know, lawyers by training, people like Madam Tahira Sayyed, and then we also have Ali Noor, who then made a switch to the music industry to that way. So I think at some level, maybe law and music, they also go together.
They do go together, and I think anyone who's in a very serious profession, they always need some kind of, at least that's the case for me, I need some kind of creative outlet. But I do think that in our generation and even the generations younger to us, we see a revival of old classical music. And I think platforms like Coke Studio, etc., they've really helped with that as well. These songs that are gaining popularity, we've had Pakistani musicians now produce music for Miss Marvel, and for, you know, shows on Netflix which have a global outreach, and I think it's really opening a plethora of opportunities, of global opportunities for Pakistani artists, which we perhaps didn't see that access in the same manner
and
before.
I think the same thing which he earlier also said, that, you know, we have a lot of talent in the music industry. We just need to streamline it. We need to regulate it, and of course we need to encourage them to, you know, do their best at the end.
We need to really encourage classical Indian classical.
You know, this is what exactly what I've noticed over a period of time, that more young people, they are generally now interested in ghazals, in classical music, in folk music, as, you know, opposed to what it was maybe a decade or two ago. Pop, so I think that conventional thing of certain kinds of people liking only certain kinds of music, that we've moved past by. But when we talk about, you know, Eid celebrations, since this is a special Eid transmission, do you not feel, more so as a woman, that, you know, if you were to compare both the Eids, Eid al-Fitr with Eid al-Azha, you know, we as women, one way or the other, do, you know, kind of prioritize our festivities more in terms of fashion and beauty when it comes to Eid al-Fitr. Perhaps maybe because Eid al-Azha comes, you know, 2 months later, and by then we are comparatively, you know, a bit low on the energy and low on the festivity and dressing up bit.
I definitely agree with you. There is a greater celebration aspect associated with Eid al-Fitr. I think also because everyone has been fasting in Ramzan, and, you know, so you constantly have something to look forward to. The end of Ramzan is marked by that. But also I think in Eid al-Azha, a lot of women are, like you said earlier, they are busy kind of logistically organizing qurbani, meat distribution, division.
On which I'll come to you, Muhammad Ali. You know, you've had that benefit of studying abroad, of living abroad more so in in the States, and then you've also been basically, you had your primary level of education at least till A levels here in Pakistan. So tell us that, how do you compare and contrast Eid as it is celebrated there to what it is here? Because, a lot of people I know who study abroad, including myself, of course, I feel that, your Eid is incomplete until unless you are in Pakistan, because no matter what you do, how many Eid Milan parties you have, it just isn't the same.
I completely agree with you, and I used to make it a point, if it was possible, to come back to Pakistan. But if we talk about the specificities of celebrating Eid abroad, I think that the Pakistan community, the Islamic Center, they used to have collaborations whereby they used to have celebrations on the Chandrat, they used to have Mehndi nights, they used to have these stalls where you could get bangles from, people used to dance, people used to show off their culture. Other international students from other countries used to also frequent the stalls that we used to put on at that particular Eid.
Right.
And also specifically, I think when you study abroad, the students around you, even Pakistanis, non-Pakistanis, that become your community, and you celebrate that Eid in that particular community. And I think that's a really good sort of celebrating sort of talking point for us.
Right, Mohammed. On which I'll come to you, Naveed Sahab. I think he's raised some very valid points, more so about, making religious festivals more inclusive, which of course, includes Eid too. So tell us about your experiences of teaching as a music teacher. How inclusive, is a music as a subject, especially when it comes to teaching it more so? Because you were telling me earlier, I remember, that you also teach differently abled children music.
Yes, exactly. Actually, we used to celebrate Eid Milan parties in our school as well, with our students as well, with different things. Children bring their lunch and they shared with each other, and even we play some games like musical chair and dancing statues, and even we make some competitions of singing.
But do the differently abled children also participate in all these different competitions and whatever kind of extracurricular activities that you have lined up?
They participate.
They do, great.
Yes,
that is amazing basically.
Yes.
So you're actually training a lot of aspiring differently abled musicians too. I think Mohammed, your narrative on this would be very important, because you yourself are a differently very accomplished person that way. When we talk about inclusivity more so with regards to Eid, how inclusive do you feel as a society when it comes to celebrating Eid with the vulnerable segments of the society, which of course includes differently abled persons too?
I think that a lot of vulnerable segments miss out sometimes.
Right.
Specifically poverty-stricken individuals, people with different abilities. I think when we come to the sort of the festivities, or even for that matter, sort of the arrangements that take place, these particular people are not considered that big of part of the society and your community. If we take one example, like the Eid prayer, which is a very big thing, right? So in the arrangement of the Eid prayer, you don't have the ramps that are present.
Right.
You don't consider that whether this place is wheelchair accessible or not.
Right.
And I think these things should be taken into consideration, because if you talk about humanity, and if even one person misses out on the celebrations, that is sort of a wrong thing. In my opinion, there should be more inclusivity that should be brought out. And I think the biggest message that every sort of festival brings out, specifically Eid and Eid al-Adha for that matter, which is based on the concept of sacrifice,
right,
which alludes to the idea of sacrificing something that you really love. Because if you look at the sort of historical narration behind this particular festival, in this particular context, if you look at the celebration that takes place, in my opinion, there should be more inclusivity, there should be ramps, there should be programming that should be specifically based on these particular people. And here I would like to really commemorate your show and the arrangements that you did in this context, where you brought in a differently abled person to bring in his perspective on the celebration of Eid. How many people know the sensitivity or sort of like the emotional connection that differently abled people have with Eid.
This is why I'm having you here on the forum today, because you know, a lot of times we see Eid shows being telecasted with, you know, the routine kind of conventional people, and I think it's very important living in this society that we give voice to, you know, all segments of the society equally, be it, you know, differently abled persons, be it transgenders, for that matter even minorities. But coming to you, I think Mehrunissa, he's raised some very, you know, valid points. When we talk about inclusivity, I think it's equally important that we talk about, you know, supporting diversity in the society, more so on auspicious occasions like Eid itself, because you know, this is something that we do see in other countries, because I remember, you must be remembering this too, that you know, in London such initiatives are particularly taken for Muslims on the day of Eid, those which were for the betterment of Muslims. So why can we not have, you know, something similar for the vulnerable segments in our Pakistani society on the occasion of Eid too?
No, I absolutely agree with you, and I think we should make Eid inclusive in the sense that we should also, there should be opportunities for non-Muslim residents in Pakistan, because they are citizens of Pakistan and it is a national holiday, so they should take part in, when we're abroad, we take part in Christmas celebrations, we enjoy the festivities. So I think we need to make that more inclusive. So if you know a family that's not celebrating Eid, make the effort of inviting them, or if you know someone, for example, who does not have a family, or you know, who's not on good ties with their family, and you know they don't have any place to go on Eid, open your house to them, make them feel welcome. And I think this really is the spirit of sacrifice, which of course, I mean, it's about sacrificing animals and all of that, but the spirit of sacrifice is deeper than that. It's also sacrifice of your time. Anything that is precious to you, because that's the whole idea behind Hazrat Ibrahim's sacrifice, that things which are valuable to you. And of course, in those times, your cattle was your livelihood, everything. So it was the most precious thing as far as you're concerned. These days, if you can't afford an animal, or you just want to do something for someone, I think in this spirit of sacrifice, like you said, initiatives for vulnerable segments, also funding a child's education in school. If
maybe
someone needs a laptop,
you know, an orphan girl getting married, or maybe perhaps giving financial assistance to people, maybe to transgenders for
maybe
that
to transgenders.
There's so many ways to do it. So what contribution can the music industry make in this regard? Because you know, if you were to generally bifurcate and see the music industry, I do feel that there's a lot more that the industry can do in this regard when we talk about, you know, ensuring inclusion and diversity generally in the society.
Well, if I just take Mehrunissa's or his word forward, I mean, music, I mean, normally what musicians do, that they come up with new songs on different occasions, for Eid, for Independence Day, and so on and so forth. But if we talk about the inclusivity, I mean, this occasion, basically our religion tells us that you have to, the sacrifice, when you sacrifice, and you have to divide it into 3 portions. 1/3 is yours, 1/3 is for your relatives, and 1/3 is for the needy. So this whole concept is so beautiful. And as you have rightly said, that it's all about coming up with different ideas, that how can we include people who feel left out. Or as he's rightly said, I have a huge circle of friends who are from different religions. I also had a life, I spent some time in Sri Lanka, lived there for 3 years, spent an expat life. So as you were mentioning, Eid used to brought this Pakistani community together.
I think when you're studying abroad, Mehrunissa, and I think Mohammed, you would agree with me on this, you make more of a conscious effort to celebrate Eid, because you know, then you have to distinguish yourself, you have to differentiate yourself from the majority there.
You have to make that effort
You have to make that effort, because here everything is just like, you know, it's happening. It's in a process, so to speak. But I think we are having a very important conversation, and your opinion, Muhammad Ali, is extremely important for us in this regard, because of course you're a very important stakeholder in this regard. When we talk about, you know, inclusivity, diversity, what role can we expect the Pakistani media to play in this regard? Because we do see a lot of Eid shows being telecasted on the occasion of Eid, but the question is that how many of them are actually projecting, you know, Eid with perhaps the vulnerable segments of the society?
I personally think that the media is a narrative creator, and if you invite such people, or not even inviting, if you discuss such things on state media or on other mediums that people watch, even for that matter YouTube channels or whatever sort of medium that you have exposure to, I think that will bring in this discourse firstly, that will talk about the importance of these particular people, because before today or before, like in the past, there was nobody that could have actually highlighted the plight or that could have highlighted the opinions that needed to be formed about these people in relation to festivals, firstly. Secondly, in my opinion, when we talk about these particular people, as these people are musicians, people with autism or people with like sort of like other sort of mental difficulties, are very good at producing art. Like people with autism are specifically the best painters. So their form of art can also be highlighted on such festivals, or not even these festivals, like in general also, to actually bring that into the mainstream discourse, so their contributions to society can be highlighted.
Being a musician, I feel that musicians also, music is a great medium to
I was
express.
about to say that.
So
it is such an important catalyst for social
exactly.
change.
And if musicians come up with different ideas, they write songs about this special topic and create and produce good music, so that could make a lot of difference.
That could be a change, because we have seen, you know, even
For
if you see the politics, you know, we have seen a lot of things being mobilized, a lot of musicians being mobilized in these political rallies
We wish that
and
you be a
whatnot.
pioneer in this.
Pioneer, exactly. And I think music and social change, they can possibly go together a long way, on which I'll come to you, Meronisa. You know, when we talk about Eid, we need to consider it, you know, in the circumstances that we all are living in currently. And as we all know, of course, there's inflation everywhere. So how do you feel can we enjoy Eid without, of course, not spending that much, and, you know, doing it in a sustainable manner?
So I think there are a couple of things there. I think firstly, eliminating wasteful practices. So much food is wasted. So many of us pile food onto our plates that we don't finish, that is thrown, right? So maybe start being more conscious about things like that. And then also remembering that we are being affected by the increase in prices and petrol prices, etc. So we must think of those less fortunate than us, because for them making ends meet is where, you know, it's a survival thing. So maybe spend a little less on your clothes, spend a little less on the lavish feast you are preparing for your dinner parties.
Or maybe you don't need to get a new Eid dress every time.
And think about
just reinvent your clothes. Why do you need a new dress every time?
Exactly. And if you are getting a new dress, then maybe also think about the staff or people around you who cannot afford that new dress, and maybe give them something as well, and be more generous with the Eidis that you are giving to those who are less fortunate than you. And I also think that we must kind of all of us must bring a drastic change to our lifestyles, because you know, it's a national goal. Generally, austerity, we're trying to practice it, and I think it really must start with festive occasions as well. You can celebrate with simplicity.
And I think this is something which is not new to us as a society. If you look back, you know, right from the time when the pandemic hit in, we were actually celebrating it in a more simple way. Now when we see that, you know, the cases have gone down and then they are coming up again, I think there has been, you know, basically a change in the festivities, so to speak. But of course, then, you know, keeping in mind the fact that the whole world has been through a pandemic, I don't think that's too difficult to practice. On which I'll come to you, Mohammed, and basically to conclude this today's Eid transmission, how precisely do you feel can we all be those, you know, socially responsible citizens of the country, that when it comes to, you know, exhibiting our civic duties, how can we actually, you know, execute the same? Because a lot comes within the domain of the civic duty, and this is something which we must take seriously, more so on occasions like Eid ul-Azha.
Yes, for sure. I think the problem with us as a society is that we have become very complacent. We rely on the state way too much. So like what we do on Eid ul-Azha is that we get waste from the animal, like for example the ojari, for example the siri, which is the head, for example the pai, which is the feet of the animal, and we tend to throw it outside the house. So what we can properly do today is try to, like, as an individual, try to manage that waste, try to throw it in the dustbin, so the smell that unperturbs us and our neighbors later does not originate in the very first place. So we cannot just say the state is responsible, they're not picking up the waste. who is responsible for actually spreading that waste in the very first place? I think it's us. Number two, when it comes to like the meat and it comes to like the blood and everything of that sort, we should not rely on people coming from outside washing the front of our roads.
You need to do it yourself, and these are the little things which you can very easily do.
Yes, for sure. And I think that if we spending so much on the animal, on the butcher, we can like spend, or we can like take out a little more time and actually perform this particular civic duty. Thirdly, meat wastage is another very important thing. We should not waste meat. We should not throw it around, even the head or the foot. We should look for people that cannot eat or that require that particular meat to actually get to them. And I think for managing this waste, there's a brilliant system that is out there, like in the Gulf or in other countries. We should also like follow that.
If I may add, you must remember that during the pandemic, we did see this whole system of joint qurbanis also coming in. So that is something, of course, which is not only cost effective, it kind of streamlines the whole process too. So perhaps resorting more to that could also be a viable option in this regard.
Yes, if you cannot control your waste, or if you think that you want to take that route, it is a brilliant way for you to actually fulfill your responsibility or obligation and to evade such problems that originate for you. But if people have the interest of doing the animal themselves, then they should also take complete responsibility.
I think they need to take complete responsibility of the cleanliness, of the waste disposal, and then also I think the animal skin, which is again a very pertinent problem too at the end. But coming to you, sir, what would your concluding message be, more so on this special transmission of Eid to all the young aspiring musicians out there, that what are the do's and what are the don'ts of becoming a successful musician in Pakistan?
For successful musicians, they need to learn basically, and unfortunately we don't have such institutes in our country where they can learn properly. So like me, I have learned from one teacher, but I never join any institute to learn.
What I was pointing out, that there is no system.
Right.
Yes.
It needs to be streamlined.
Yes.
Right, Naveed Saab, your point has been noted. But coming towards you, sir, I think he's raised some valid points on which I would want you to deliberate further. When we talk about, overall improving the music industry, since you are, an accomplished musician in your own right, what would your recommendations be in this regard? More so when it comes to overall improving the quality and the standard of the Pakistani music industry.
Commercialism is there too much, and commercialism has affected this music industry also globally. There is no quality if we talk about music now. There's a lot of music being produced, but I feel if I listen to 100 songs, I might like one or two. Sajjad Ali, I mean, there are names who produce good music. But getting back to your point, it's very important for musicians and industry in totality that they must focus on good quality.
Right.
If I talk about, in particular, if I talk about a song, there has to be a team.
Right.
There should be a lyricist, there should be a music director. The problem is, it's a one-man show these days.
So what would your recommendations be in this regard when we talk about, making the music industry more inclusive with regards to, different segments of the Pakistani society?
Musicians, there is a very good mix in the music industry already. It's all about bringing them forward, producing such shows where you have a mix of talent from every society, because there is a lot of talent. I watch these videos which go viral from areas which I have never heard of the name of that area, but the talent is so much. That guy, that little girl is singing, and suddenly they are in the mainstream. So it's all about giving them that much needed exposure, I must say.
So your point is noted, on which I'll come to you, Mehrunissa. And before we conclude today's special Eid transmission, I think we must talk about, the Eid safety tips at the end, because I think we've had a very interesting, rather very dynamic kind of a conversation today here on the set. So when we talk about, Eid safety, how precisely can we ensure that, be it in terms of perhaps, not overeating and not falling sick, or for that matter, ensuring that, you clean the waste that you do create on the event of sacrifice?
So I think firstly, like you said, don't overeat. You will have the opportunity to eat meat in your life again.
Right.
It's not the last day, so don't end up in hospital. And I think secondly, like we said, that don't, I mean, you're doing this act of service for God, and do not make this act of service an inconvenience for other people or people living around you.
Right.
Clean up after yourself. Parts of the animal or organs which you are not using, don't leave them out on the street to rot and for, you know, bad odor to kind of accumulate around it. There are places where you can donate this, and you know, people will be
People donate online too.
people donate online to give your skins or unneeded parts of the animal there. Some vulnerable people might be able to benefit from that. And I
Right.
think thirdly, what we spoke about, have the awareness and the compassion to include people who are otherwise
which is
excluded.
extremely important.
Which
It
is extremely
exactly
important.
why I wanted
Yes.
to, you know, raise these issues during the special transmission,
Exactly.
because a lot of times, unfortunately, we do see that, you know, these vulnerable segments in the society, their voices are not heard. And I think
Exactly.
it's very important that we talk about their narrative, about, you know, their perspective
And
towards
their
life.
experience.
Their experience, that too on religious festivals like Eid, on which note I would like to conclude today's transmission. Thank you so much, Muhammad Ali.
Thank you so much, Ji.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much, Naveed Saab. Thank you so much, Tausif Saab. And you're most welcome, Ji. And thank you so much, Amir
Thank you
Hamza,
so
for
much
being
for
here
having
with us today. So before we conclude, I think we should keep this tradition on. We started off with your song, and I think we should end with your song too.
Sure.
So over to you, Tausif Saab.
So it's another song from
Right.
another movie,
Right.
and it's called Do Nain Tere. दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए, दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए, पहली ही नजर दिल हार गए, दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए, पहली ही नजर दिल हार गए, दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए, ला रा 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 ता रा रा, ला रा 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 ता रा रा, ला रा 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 रू, ये नैन तेरे मत वाले से कुछ सुरमीले, कुछ काले से, कुछ सहमे हुए शर्माए से, कुछ बहके हुए घबराए से, ये रूप नशीला दिन का है, सारा ही जादू इनका है, कितना रोका ये नैन मगर, कितना रोका ये नैन मगर, तेरी ही तरफ हर बार गए, दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए, दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए, पहली ही नजर दिल हार गए, दो नैन तेरे हाय मार गए. Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Well, to conclude today's special transmission, we must, you know, reiterate the fact that when we talk about Eid, Eid is just not that one occasion where you know, kind of reconnect with people, where you meet family and friends. It's just not an occasion where you know, should come together to celebrate and, of course, be in that full festive mood. It is also an occasion where you must remember that you need to give back to the society. You need to ensure that, you know, you take all parts of the society together with you in those terms, you know, ensuring inclusivity. And it is that one occasion in which we need to ensure that we are compassionate towards people, we are kind towards people, because, you know, in a world where one could be anything, one must choose to be kind. So before we sign off, I'll say 1, 2, 3, and then we can all collectively wish our viewers a very happy Eid Mubarak. 1, 2, and 3. Eid Mubarak.
जान भी दे दूं तू कहे ओ जाने जाना, जान भी दे दूं, तू कहे ओ जाने जाना, तेरे बगैर जिंदगी, तेरे बगैर जिंदगी कुछ भी नहीं है मान।